A black man returning from a business trip faced humiliation when a racist cop mocked his passport as irrelevant and tossed it in the trash. Days later, that same officer learned the shocking truth. His target wasn't just a traveler, but his new boss. What happened next stunned everyone. But let's start from the beginning. Mark Williams, a distinguished black attorney, exuded confidence and professionalism as he navigated the bustling international airport. At 35 years old, Mark's poised demeanor and sharp intellect were evident in every step he took. His tall, athletic build complemented his polished appearance. A tailored navy blue suit, a crisp white shirt, and a sleek burgundy tie that added a subtle touch of color. Black leather Oxford shoes gleamed with every step, and a luxury wristwatch adorned his left wrist, reflecting his meticulous attention to detail. His short, neatly trimmed black hair framed his warm brown eyes, which conveyed a quiet strength and unwavering composure. Having just returned from a highly successful overseas business trip, Mark carried a slim leather briefcase containing important documents, a symbol of his career achievements and hard work. He was a man who had broken barriers, earning respect in the legal field and beyond. Despite his accomplishments, Mark was no stranger to the challenges of systemic bias and prejudice, which made him resolute in maintaining his dignity under pressure. At the customs checkpoint, Mark approached with calm professionalism, handing over his passport with a polite nod. Officer Jackson Ray, a white man in his early 40s, known for his biased behavior, met him with immediate skepticism. Jackson's stocky frame and cold gray-blue eyes hinted at his unyielding attitude, while his polished Navy uniform and gleaming badge signaled his authority. However, his demeanor quickly turned hostile as he glanced at Mark's passport. "What's a guy like you doing traveling first class?" Jackson sneered, his voice dripping with condescension. Without a moment's hesitation, he tossed the passport into a nearby trash can, smirking as he added, "People like you don't belong here." Despite the insult, Mark's expression remained steady. His voice was calm, yet firm, as he replied, "You're making a mistake." The tension in the air grew as a small crowd began recording the encounter, but no one intervened. Mark's resolve stayed unbroken as he was led to a holding area, his dignity bruised, but his inner strength intact. Unbeknownst to Jackson, the man he had just humiliated was about to step into a role that would change everything: the new chief of police. The following week, the police department buzzed with anticipation as officers filed into the conference room for a mandatory staff meeting. The room, brightly lit with fluorescent lighting, was plain but professional, with white walls adorned by the department's insignia and American flags flanking a central podium. Rows of Navy uniformed officers filled the chairs, their murmurs blending into an indistinct hum. Rumors had spread like wildfire about the arrival of a new police chief, a reformer determined to tackle corruption and racism head-on. Among the crowd was Officer Jackson Ray, a 40-year-old white man known for his brash arrogance. Jackson, dressed impeccably in his Navy uniform, with a polished badge on his chest, strutted into the room with his usual confidence. His blonde hair was neatly combed, and his gray-blue eyes carried their typical air of superiority. Jackson assumed this would be just another bureaucrat with lofty ideas, someone he could easily dismiss. When the murmurs died down, the door at the front of the room opened, and in walked Mark Williams, the new police chief. Standing tall in a tailored gray suit, crimson tie, and polished black shoes, Mark exuded authority. His short black hair and piercing brown eyes reflected both calm and determination. As he stepped behind the podium, the room fell silent. Jackson's smug expression vanished the instant he recognized Mark. His face turned pale, and his confident demeanor gave way to visible discomfort. Beads of sweat began to form on his forehead as Mark's commanding gaze locked onto him. "I believe in accountability and respect, no matter who you are or where you come from," Mark said, his voice steady and firm. "These are the values I intend to uphold in this department." Jackson shifted in his chair, his earlier arrogance replaced by unease. Later, in a private meeting, Mark faced Jackson directly. "Do you remember me, officer?" he asked, his tone calm but sharp. Jackson stammered, attempting to deflect, but Mark interrupted, his words cutting through. "Your actions at the airport were not just unprofessional. They were a disgrace to this badge." Jackson's shame was palpable, as Mark's unwavering authority left no room for excuses. News of Officer Jackson Ray's misconduct at the airport spread rapidly through the police department, fueled by viral videos shared across social media. The footage of Jackson tossing Mark Williams's passport into the trash with a sneer, combined with his demeaning remarks, caused outrage both inside and outside the department. Mark Williams, now the police chief, acted swiftly, launching an internal investigation, not just into Jackson's behavior, but into the systemic issues of discrimination that had allowed such attitudes to persist, unchecked. The department's atmosphere shifted dramatically. Officers who had once admired or tolerated Jackson's overbearing demeanor now distanced themselves. The 40-year-old white officer, known for his blonde hair, stocky build, and sharp blue-gray eyes, found himself isolated. His previously confident posture was replaced by a slouched gait, his eyes often fixed on the floor. Conversations hushed when he entered a room, and colleagues avoided his gaze. Once the loudest and most assertive voice in meetings, Jackson now sat silently at the edges, a shadow of his former self. Mark, however, refused to let the situation devolve into mere retribution. Standing tall with his composed demeanor, the 35-year-old black chief, dressed impeccably in his tailored gray suit and crimson tie, made his intentions clear. "We're not here for revenge," he stated in a department-wide address. "We're here to rebuild trust and ensure accountability." Jackson was given a choice: attend mandatory diversity and de-escalation training or face suspension. Reluctantly, he chose the training. Over the following weeks, Jackson sat in the training sessions, dressed in casual civilian attire, a light blue shirt and khaki pants, his discomfort visible. At first, his body language was defensive, arms crossed, his jaw tight, and his eyes avoiding direct contact. But as the sessions progressed, Jackson began to change. He listened to heartfelt stories from colleagues and community members, their accounts highlighting the devastating impact of bias and discrimination. His posture softened, his expressions grew more contemplative. While far from a complete transformation, seeds of empathy and understanding were planted. Mark observed the progress with cautious optimism, determined to not just address individual behavior, but to create a culture of accountability and respect throughout the department. Months later, the police department hosted a community outreach event in the bright and welcoming hall of a local community center. Sunlight streamed through large windows, casting warm hues on walls, decorated with posters advocating unity and diversity. Rows of chairs were arranged in a semicircle around a podium, creating an intimate setting for dialogue between the police force and the residents they served. Chief Mark Williams, dressed in a navy blazer, crisp white shirt, and tailored slacks, moved quietly among the crowd. The 35-year-old black leader exuded calm authority, his short black hair neatly styled, and his warm brown eyes focused on fostering connections. Though his expression was composed, there was a subtle weight in his gaze, a reflection of the immense responsibility he bore. To everyone's surprise, Officer Jackson Ray volunteered to lead a workshop during the event. Now 40 years old, the once confident white officer entered the room with a newfound humility. His blonde hair was neatly combed, and he wore his Navy uniform, badge polished to a shine. Jackson's demeanor had softened. The tension that once marked his expressions was replaced with sincerity. Standing at the podium, Jackson addressed the room. His voice, steady but tinged with emotion, acknowledged his past mistakes. "I was wrong," he said, recounting his misconduct at the airport and how Chief Williams's actions had forced him to confront his biases. "That moment changed me. It showed me the damage one person's prejudice can cause, not just to individuals, but to the trust of an entire community." Mark stood at the back, arms crossed, his faint smile betraying a mix of pride and caution. He didn't yet fully trust Jackson, but he believed in the potential for growth and redemption. As the event concluded and residents approached Mark to thank him for his leadership, Jackson walked over. His blue-gray eyes met Mark's as he said simply, "I was wrong. I see that now." Mark nodded, his tone firm yet encouraging. "What matters is what you do moving forward. Accountability is a choice we make every day." The two men walked away, one beginning his journey of redemption, the other steadfast in his mission to build a more just and equitable system.